So I recently finished Chlorine by Jade Song, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. This is one of those books that burrows into your brain. By the time I finished it, I immediately knew it was going to be one of my favorite books I've ever read, which is why I was so surprised to see that it has around a 3.6 rating on Goodreads. Before I get into it, this video will start spoiler free, but I'll let you know before I discuss the ending because there's a lot to unpack. Chlorine is probably best described as a queer coming-of-age novel with body horror. It follows Ren, a Chinese-American high school swimmer who has been obsessed with mermaids since she was a little girl, and to her, mermaids aren't just a fantasy creature, they really represent freedom. Mermaids are everything she wishes she could become. Swimming is the closest she can get to that freedom. But swimming is also a place where she's subjected to constant scrutiny. Her coaches push her beyond her limits, her parents pressure her to succeed, her teammates become her rivals and lovers. Her body is constantly examined, criticized, and expected to perform at its best capacity, even when she gets injured. She is trying to understand her own sexuality as she falls in love with another girl who's on her team. The book captures something that I think is really difficult to describe, which is how violent growing up can be, especially if you're a queer girl or a person of color in America. Not always through literal violence, although there is certainly that, but also through expectations. Through constantly being told what your body should look like, what it should do, and who it should desire, and who you're allowed to become. Everything in Ren's life is trying to shape her into someone else. What I loved most is that this isn't really a story about mermaids, it's a story about transformation. Every page is asking the same question: what happens when someone wants so desperately to escape the body that they've been given? What happens when the world insists your body belongs to everyone except for you? That idea keeps evolving throughout the novel. The swimming pool becomes a place of freedom, but also a place of imprisonment. Pain becomes transformation, blood becomes transformation, puberty becomes transformation, even menstruation, which honestly feels like such an obvious topic for body horror. It's used in a way that felt completely fresh to me. It's unsettling, it's intimate, and deeply tied to Ren's relationship with her own body. The entire novel is obsessed with bodies changing, breaking, and becoming something else. Violent transformations over and over and over again. One criticism I see over and over is Jade Song's writing style. A lot of readers call it clunky or complain about long run-on sentences, and honestly, I do understand where they're coming from. The prose isn't clean or minimalist. Sometimes the sentences spill over themselves, but for me, I think it worked. I became so invested in Ren's emotional world that the style stopped mattering. The overwhelming sentences mirror Ren's overwhelming experience of living inside her own body. I also came across an interview where Jade Song said something that completely reframed the book for me. She said that she feels more like an artist than a writer, and that writing is just part of her art. I think that really shows here. And in the same interview, she says, "It's because of art that my meanest inclinations and worst rages do not consume me. Just by allowing myself to listen to the art, I then become free." After reading Chlorine, that quote makes perfect sense to me. The novel feels less interested in telling a neat story than expressing a feeling of rage. Okay, official spoiler warning. If you think you might read Chlorine, stop watching here because the ending is absolutely worth experiencing for yourself for the first time. Basically, at the end of the novel, Ren literally cuts open her own legs and sews them together, trying to transform herself into a mermaid. It's horrifying, it's graphic, and it's painful to read, but it also somehow feels inevitable with the flow of the book. By that point, the novel has spent hundreds of pages showing how everyone around Ren has tried to reshape her body and define who she should be. And this final act is horrifying because it's the first transformation that is entirely her own. Then, with the help of the girl that she loves, she escapes a psychiatric hospital and disappears into a river, and she's never seen again. Does she become a mermaid? The book refuses to answer this question, and honestly, I really don't think it matters because that's not the point. The transformation is complete either way. Whether it's literal or metaphorical, Ren finally escapes every identity that she's been forced into. I also have to mention the cover because it's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorite book covers that I own, and I think it perfectly captures the strange beauty of the novel itself. And I know the writing style won't work for everyone, But for me, the emotional core of the story was so powerful that I couldn't stop thinking about it long after I finished. This was Jade Song's debut novel, and if this is what she writes for her first book, I'm incredibly excited to see what she writes next. She has written other books, I just haven't read them yet, but they are on my TBR. If you're someone who enjoys queer coming of age stories, or especially body horror that actually has something meaningful to say, I think Chlorine is worth reading.